Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, I want you to try something. I want you to picture two completely different images in your mind.
Okay, lay it on me. I'm ready.
All right, first up, picture the most Swiss thing you can imagine. We're talking, the Alps, everything's pristine, trains are running to the second, high-end engineering, perfect chocolate.
The height of precision
Yeah,
and probably pretty expensive. Got it.
exactly.
Oop.
Okay, now for the second image, I want you to just completely switch gears. Picture a dusty, unpaved road in rural Mozambique. The power grid is like super unreliable. Or maybe a crowded, chaotic street market in Bangalore.
Yeah, those feel like they're worlds apart. Total opposites.
They really do. But the story we're digging into today is all about a company that tried to bridge that exact gap. We got a whole stack of case studies here on a company called Bühler AG.
And if you're in the food industry, you definitely know that name. They're the giants. They build these massive multi-million-dollar food processing plants.
Right. If you've eaten pasta or bread or chocolate, chances are a Bühler machine was involved somewhere along the line.
They're the heavyweights. They're used to dealing with huge corporations, signing these enormous contracts, stuff that takes months and months to install.
Exactly. So the whole mission for this deep dive is to figure out how this very conservative, very high-end Swiss engineering firm managed to pivot so dramatically. How do you take that level of industrial tech, shrink it down, and sell it to entrepreneurs in places where, a bank account might not even be a given?
It's a really fascinating journey, and what stands out from reading these sources is that this isn't a story about charity. I think we need to be really clear on that from the start.
Right, this isn't just corporate social responsibility.
No, not at all. This is what they call inclusive business. It's about finding a way to be profitable while also solving huge problems like malnutrition and food security.
Which sounds amazing on a slide deck, right? Doing well by doing good. But the reality, as we're about to see, is, well, it's a lot messier.
And a lot harder. We've got two main stories to unpack. The Isigayo maize mill in Africa, and then the whole PesaMill project in India.
Very different challenges, but both forced Bühler to completely rethink their entire business model.
Absolutely.
So let's start in sub-Saharan Africa with the maize market. What was the situation like before Bühler got involved?
Well, you basically had a broken system. You could call it oligopolistic. In the big cities, you had these huge industrial-scale mills, and they produced really good, high-quality white maize flour. It was clean, shelf-stable,
And fortified with vitamins.
and crucially fortified, yes. But the problem was logistics. Getting that good flour from the city out to remote villages was, it was a nightmare. The cost just exploded.
Making it totally unaffordable for most people in rural areas. So what were they eating instead?
They were relying on these local hammer mills.
Hammer mills just sounds brutal.
It's not far off, really. Picture a drum with what are literally metal hammers spinning around, just smashing the corn against the screen. It's loud, it's inefficient.
And the flour must be pretty coarse.
Very coarse, very inconsistent. But the real public health issue was the nutrition, or the lack of it.
Because you can't add vitamins in a setup like that.
Exactly. You need a really precise dosing system to fortify flour properly. You can't just, toss a scoop of vitamin powder into a hammer mill and hope for the best. It just doesn't work. So you had this huge gap.
So Bühler sees this gap. And around 2010, there's this internal innovation challenge. A team in South Africa basically puts their hand up and says, hey, we think we can fix this.
And that idea became the Isigayo, which I learned is Zulu for the grinding.
Okay, but looking at the specs, this thing is way more than just a better hammer mill. This is like a whole factory in a box, isn't it?
2 boxes, actually. 2 standard 40-foot shipping containers. And this is where that Swiss engineering really comes into play. Normally, building a mill is a massive construction project.
Foundations, a multi-story building, specialized crews working for months.
Right. All things you just can't do in a remote village. So they designed the Isigayo to be completely plug and play.
Define plug and play for me. I'm guessing it's not a standard outlet.
No, definitely not. You need a pretty hefty generator, about 200 kVA.
Yeah.
But the physical setup, yeah. You pour a concrete slab, a truck drops off the 2 containers, you stack them, and everything inside is pre-wired and pre-assembled.
So you could be up and running in, what, a week?
In about a week.
Yeah.
And it's doing the whole industrial process inside. It's cleaning the grain, conditioning it, degerminating it. That's taking out the oily parts so the flour lasts longer. And then it's got the roller mills and the dosifier for the vitamins.
It's bringing city-quality food to the village level.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
So technically, they absolutely nailed it. They miniaturized the factory. But this is where the story pivots from an engineering challenge to an economic one.
This is where the real struggle started.
It was a huge reality check.
Yeah.
The price for one of these things was between 250,000 and 300,000 Swiss francs.
So roughly $250,000 US. For a company like Bühler, that's nothing. But for an entrepreneur in rural Zambia,
It's an astronomical sum. I mean, it's an impossible amount of money. And this is where the whole inclusive business idea gets its first major test. You've got the perfect product, a community that desperately needs it, but your target customer has zero ability to pay for it.
and the local banks, I'm guessing they weren't interested.
Not even a little bit. These entrepreneurs, they often have no credit history, no collateral. The bank would just look at that risk profile and say, no way.
So Bühler is stuck. And it gets worse, right? There was also a problem with the flour itself.
Yeah, the classic chicken and egg problem. People in the villages were used to the taste and texture of the coarse hammer-milled flour. They were actually suspicious of this new, superfine, whiter flour from the Isigayo.
So the miller doesn't want to risk buying the machine until he knows people will actually buy the flour.
And the people can't try the flour until a miller buys the machine. It's a complete stalemate.
This feels like the point where most companies would just pack it in.
And this is where Bühler had to change. They had to stop thinking like an equipment seller and start thinking more like a business consultant.
They had to sell the whole business model, not just the hardware.
Precisely. So first, financing. They couldn't lend the money themselves. That was too risky. But they started working with the International Finance Corporation, the IFC, to create these business plan templates. They would literally sit with an entrepreneur and map it all out.
Here's your cost, here's your margin, here's your cash flow.
They essentially became finance brokers out of sheer necessity. And they also had to pivot on who their customer was. The sources point to this one big failure where they tried to sell to governments and NGOs.
Which makes sense on paper.
It does. But the deal, it was for 24 units, it just fell apart. Bureaucracy, red tape, politics. It was a mess. It taught them a hard lesson.
Which was?
Governments are too slow. They needed to sell to entrepreneurs, people with skin in the game who wanted to build a business. The profit motive is just. It's faster.
And that leads to the big success story, the ECA project in Mozambique. This is where it all came together.
This is the proof of concept. And it involves, of all things, a brewery.
Right. The grits story.
Exactly. So they set up in Isigayo, and they found a local brewery that was importing expensive maize grits to brew their beer. The Isigayo team realized, wait a minute, we can make those grits.
So let me see if I have this right. The local farmers sell their corn to the mill.
Right, giving them a guaranteed market.
The mill then makes grits and sells them to the brewery.
Which saves the brewery money on imports. And then the byproduct of that whole process is the fortified flour for the local community. It's a perfect self-sustaining ecosystem.
That is shared value in action. It's not about charity. It's about smart business that benefits everyone.
And that sustainability is the key.
So they crack the code in Africa. They figure out the factory in a box. Then they turn their attention to India. And I'm guessing the thinking was, okay, we've got the blueprint. Let's just do it again.
And they would have been dead wrong. India was a completely different beast. In Africa, they were introducing a new product, the roller meal. In India, the challenge was to perfectly replicate an ancient one.
And we're talking about atta flour for rotis and chapati?
The staple food for, what, 1 billion people?
Mm-hmm.
And people are incredibly particular about their rotis.
So what's the secret?
It all comes down to the traditional chakki, which is a stone mill. 2 big stones grinding together. It's old tech, but the friction creates a lot of heat, and that heat damages the starch in a very specific way.
And damage is actually a good thing here.
For a roti, yes, it's essential. That specific kind of starch damage helps the flour absorb more water, which is what makes the roti puff up perfectly and stay soft.
And Bühler's standard steel roller mills, they're designed to do the exact opposite, to keep things cool.
Right, which is why all the previous industrial attempts to make atta had just failed miserably. Consumers hated it. They said it had the wrong taste, the wrong texture.
So the challenge was to build an industrial-scale machine that's hygienic and efficient, but that also basically abuses the flour in the same way as a stone.
It was a physics nightmare. It took them 6 years to solve it.
6 years. In product development, that's an eternity.
It is. The project was called PesaMill. They couldn't use actual stones. They'd wear out too quickly. So they ended up adapting high compression technology from the mining industry.
From mining, like for crushing ore.
Pretty much. Instead of grinding grain by grain, it creates what they call a particle bed. a thick layer of grain that gets crushed under immense pressure. It mimics the action of the stones, but with durable steel.
And the early versions just fell apart.
They did. The pressure was so intense the bearings would fail. The cost was also spiraling. At one point, it was 5 times more expensive than just setting up a bunch of traditional stone mills.
This is where you'd expect the CFO to come in and just kill the whole thing. Why didn't they?
Because comp management saw the long-term strategic value. The Indian market is enormous. They knew if they could crack this, they'd own the premium ATA market for a generation.
And to crack it, they had to pass the ultimate test, the roti test.
This is my favorite part of the story. They moved the R&D from Switzerland to Bangalore. They knew they couldn't design this in Europe. Apparently, engineers were literally flying back to Switzerland with sacks of Indian wheat in their luggage.
Anything to declare, just 50 kilos of wheat, sir.
Exactly. But once they were in Bangalore, they set up a test kitchen and served rotis from the prototype flour to their Indian employees in the canteen.
Your most honest and most brutal critics.
Absolutely. They also worked with the National Food Lab for blind taste tests. They just kept iterating until the lab literally could not tell the difference between the PesaMill flour and traditional stone ground flour.
That's the gold standard. So they launch it. One PesaMill replaces 20 stone mills, saves energy, it's more hygienic. The big players must have loved it.
They did. But then Bühler had this realization. They were only serving the very top of the pyramid.
The big industrial companies.
Right. They were missing the huge market of small, local, mom-and-pop chackies.
So they had to shrink the tech all over again.
Exactly. And that became the AlPesa. It's a miniaturized version of that same high-pressure technology designed for a small shop.
It feels like the Isigayo strategy all over again. Go small to win big.
It is, but with a different angle. The goal was to turn service providers into entrepreneurs.
What's the difference there?
So a typical chaki owner is a service provider. You bring him your grain, he grinds it for a fee. The AlPesa let that same shop owner buy his own grain, grind it, package it, and sell his own branded ATA. It moves him up the value chain.
But cost must have been a huge hurdle again.
A massive struggle. They had to use off-the-shelf parts, strip out anything non-essential, and they had to change their sales model, using local dealers instead of a corporate sales team. But the real genius was seeing the AlPesa as a door opener.
A Trojan horse.
Kind of. You sell a small miller an AlPesa. His business grows. He starts to trust the Bühler brand. 5 or 10 years later, when he's ready to scale up,
He calls them to buy the big PesaMill.
he's already in their ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
They're growing their future customers from the ground up.
So when you boil it all down, these two very different stories, what are the big takeaways?
I think the first one is the importance of standardization. The courage to say no.
How do you mean?
With Isigayo, customers were always asking for modifications. Can it make snacks? Can you make it smaller? Bühler learned that to keep the cost down, it had to be like the Model T. One size fits all. Take it or leave it.
Which is tough. You want to please the customer.
It is. But for inclusive business, managing cost is everything. And the second lesson has to be localization. And not just, translating the manual.
This is deep localization.
You have to be on the ground. You have to understand that the puff of a roti is a non-negotiable feature. You have to realize that the biggest problem for your African customer isn't the machine's speed, it's getting a bank loan.
You have to solve the whole problem, not just the engineering part.
Right. The innovation wasn't just the machine. It was the business plan template, the distribution network, the financing partnership.
And the patience. That's the third thing, isn't it? These projects took years and almost failed multiple times.
You need leadership with the vision to support that, to see it as a long-term strategic investment, not something that has to show a profit next quarter.
Was it profitable in the end?
The sources say yes. The Isigayo project, for instance, made about 9 million Swiss francs on the first 16 units. It's modest for a company their size, but it was profitable. It proved the model works.
It's an incredible story. And I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've been talking about Africa and India, but think about the trends happening right here.
Yeah.
Supply chains are getting shorter. Everyone's talking about local production.
Farm to table, resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the conversation of the decade.
So could this factory-in-a-box model be the future, not just for developing nations, but for everyone? Could the future of food processing be a high-tech, modular unit in, I don't know, rural Ohio or the English countryside?
Decentralized, high-tech manufacturing. It's a really powerful idea. It's certainly more resilient. If one small unit goes down, the whole system doesn't collapse.
Maybe the era of the giant megaplant is ending, and maybe the future is thousands of these little factories sitting right where the food is grown.
It's a very robust way to think about feeding the world.
Something to think about. Thanks so much for unpacking all of this with me today.
My pleasure. It's a great case study.
And to you listening, thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Mission Possible, innovating for the world's most marginalized. This podcast is built on the outstanding work of our students, whose curiosity and commitment drive much of the research and storytelling you hear. Each episode is grounded in academic research and shaped through close collaboration with our partners. To learn more about the research and partnerships behind this podcast, feel free to contact us. Thank you for joining.